Bottom of the first inning, no score. By the way, when we start the top of the second inning, because Old Glory means so much to each and every one of us, and this is a great and patriotic weekend, starting the top of the second inning, and we're certainly not going to get into the game with it. We're going to drop in a few notes about the Star Spangled Banner and the flag itself and the author. So if there are youngsters around, you might want to bring them a little closer at the start of an inning, and they'll learn a little something extra about our flag. By 1977, the United States was waffling on the exact look of its flag. It was a cause for concern for Thomas Green, an American Indian who wanted the protection of an official flag while traveling through treacherous territory. He asked Congress to help, throwing in 3 strings of wampum to sweeten the deal. Within 10 days, a resolution was passed, finalizing the flag as a creation with 13 stars and 13 stripes. The date, June the 14th, 1777. 1-0 Dodgers, top of the third inning. You know, she may have seen and sewn quite a few in her day. There's no actual evidence that Betsy Ross was the person responsible for the design of our flag. In fact, Betsy's name didn't even come up in conjunction with the deed until 1876, 40 years after her death. The first person to have made the claim was a New Jersey congressman. The deal was not accepted, and by the way, there also seems to be a dispute as to whether Betsy Ross ever lived in Philadelphia's popular Betsy Ross home. Curtis Granderson takes a strike, and the count 0-1. Top of the fourth inning, 1-0 Dodgers. The flag has 13 stripes, except when it didn't. Upon welcoming Vermont and Kentucky, they would be states 14 and 15 into the Union. A new version of the flag was created that had 15 stars and 15 stripes. Well, as the U.S. continued to add new states, there was concern about having to continually add additional stripes. So the solution, well, stick with the 13 to represent the original colonies and let the stars do the heavy lifting. Top of the fifth, the 1-1 tie. We talked about the fact they decided that the stripes would remain and the changes would occur with the stars. Well, as of 1818, convention settled in that way. However, one thing remained, let's say, uncodified: the star layout. Well, there was a 26-star flag. There was a 33-star Fort Sumter flag. There was even a 38-star concentric creation as well. So the stars have changed, but the stars and the stripes remain the same. And we go to the fifth, 1-1 on a magnificent sunset time in Southern California. 1-1, top of the sixth inning. You know, the flag that Francis Scott Key wrote, "Hailed at the twilight's last gleaming," it didn't fly through the perilous fight. It was pouring rain the night that the British were really trying to tear up Fort McHenry in Baltimore, and the smaller of the 2 large flags that the soldiers had, because the rain, the big flag could not be put up in the wet. So they put the small flag up, and then when the United States held and the British was stopped, they took the small wet flag down, they put the large flag up. And that's the flag that Francis Scott Key saw while he was negotiating with the British on a British warship. Top of the seventh, a 1-1 tie. You know, there have been 27 official versions of the U.S. flag, each with a different amount of stars. A 39-star version is not among them, and that didn't stop a lot of people, some enterprising flag manufacturers, from producing one for the marketplace. The reason for the miscalculation? Some thought North Dakota and South Dakota were going to be admitted as one state. You know, 1-1 tie, top of the eighth inning. When Alaska and Hawaii became states number 49 and 50, President Eisenhower received thousands of ideas for an updated flag. Almost all of them were of a 50-star flag, including the one that won. The one that won was from Robert G. Heft, who created the design for a class project. He was one of 3 to submit the version that was accepted and remains in use today. By the way, for the student, his name was Robert Heft, 17 years old, from Lancaster, Ohio, and he got a B- on his project. 1-1, top of the 9th inning. By the way, the 50-star flag is their first one to have lasted 50 years. In contrast, over a 50-year period in the early 1800s, the flag went through 17 different versions. And by the way, the actual flag, the one that they put up after the rain in Baltimore that inspired the Star-Spangled Banner, it still exists. It does indeed. It's immortalized in the Star-Spangled Banner, 15-star, 15-bar flag. What's left of it is on permanent display at the Smithsonian's National Museum of American History.